Hello, everyone, and welcome to the UNX News Radio podcast, your news source for all things unexplained. And now, here's your host for the UNX News podcast, Margie K.
Good evening and welcome to UNX News. I'm your host, Margie K. We are here every Friday at 5 o'clock live on YouTube and Facebook. I have a great show for you tonight. But first, I want to remind everybody to please visit my website, unxmedia.com. And there you will find a slew of books and authors and our latest book that is coming out. It's probably going to be this weekend by Debbie Ziegelmeyer. It's called The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways. And it is a fantastic book. You've got to see that and read all about it. So look for that and more coming soon. If you are a writer, please contact us because we publish books about unexplained phenomena. And that is our genre. That's what we stick to. And we'd like to hear from you if you are a writer. With me this evening are two very special ladies. This is all about a case in Sugar Creek, Missouri. Valerie Hoover is the witness, and Gene Walker is the lead investigator on this case. I have assisted on the case as an investigator as well, and I have seen many things, but basically, it's craziness going on. And if you don't know where Sugar Creek is, it is just north of Independence, Missouri, which is right near Kansas City. And Sugar Creek is right next to the Missouri River, which is not a big surprise for people who are into ufology. You know that a lot of sightings happen around rivers. So welcome to the program, Gene and Valerie.
Hi, Val.
Thanks for joining me this evening. Valerie, I love your New York shirt. That looks awesome. Let's kind of start from the beginning. When did you first start noticing unusual things happening at your place?
It was 2012. It was during the summer.
And what happened?
Well, the first time I noticed it, I went to go outside. It was late at night. I forgot to clean up after cooking at the grill, and looked over towards the. I can't remember which way that would be, north or east. It would be west. Looked over to the west, and I noticed a light in the sky. And it was moving, and I stared at it for a while because I'd never seen it there. And I was holding my tray of salt and pepper and garlic salt and all that, and I stared at that, and all of a sudden I just dropped it. Everything fell to the ground, and that was my first experience. Not my first experience, but my first experience there.
Yes, and let's go back as well. You have had other experiences in your lifetime. When was your first experience?
My first experience is when I was probably about 15, and I had to go to the bus stop early in the morning, go to school. And it was, of course, it was real dark. And I noticed a craft in the sky, and I wondered if it was a helicopter, but it didn't look like a helicopter. And it had a big window in the front, and I could see there was a couple of people in there moving, like they were walking around. And I knew you can't walk around in a helicopter. And so, when I came home from school, I went to my mom and told her the experience, because she didn't know. My parents had always believed in UFOs. They were watchers. They liked to watch. But that was my first real experience of seeing something like that.
Okay, well, let's jump forward in time. You had this sighting in 2012, and then did you report that sighting immediately to MUFON?
No, I did not.
How long was it?
It wasn't till probably, I guess, a month and I just started seeing things all the time. It just all of a sudden everything started happening. They'd come down out of the sky. Some was just really bright lights. Some moved. Some had different shapes, and uh, so then that's when I got on. I didn't know. I wanted to report it. But I didn't know where to go to. And then I had watched TV and had heard of MUFON. So that I just looked it up on the computer, MUFON, and then I found out how to report it.
So you had not only seen these strange objects in the sky, but some of them actually came down close to you, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
How close would one of them have been?
Well, let's see. The closest one that came down to me was there was a you you guys had come out to the house to take pictures and to investigate, and then there was a storm that had was coming in, and you guys were packing up your things so they wouldn't get wet, and so you could, because it looked like a really bad storm coming in, and no sooner than you guys had left, there was a light across the street, and that's a conservation that was across the street from me, and I saw it coming up over the hill, and I saw about three of them, but one came across the street, and it kept getting brighter and bigger and bigger and brighter, and it no longer wasn't just a bright light, but it was an actual disc, and it came in my backyard, and probably about I'll say uh, 30 feet from me, and hovered above the ground, probably about I'll say 10 feet off the ground, and I saw it there, and it was spinning very slowly, though. It was spinning, and I could see all the windows in detail. I looked at it and I studied it to see if I could see anything that, uh, like seams or anything like that. It was all one piece. I noticed the top and how it went like this. Now it went like this. It went like this. It went like this. It kind of had a point at the bottom. There was a little bit of a point at the top, and it was just spinning there right in front of me. And it was raining, and my dog was right there. My dog's always with me. He watches everything I do, sees the same things I do. I wish you could talk to him.
We have another witness.
He can
Yes.
tell you a thing or two.
Right, exactly.
And so I watched this thing for a while, and I just felt numb. I didn't feel scared. Uh, I just felt frozen, and I couldn't keep my eyes off from it. And then it lifted up, and it just ever so slowly went up, and it went up over the trees and went. So I know I was doing that night. I was getting ready to take care of my chickens, and put them away because it was raining. And so I went into the garage where the feed was at, and it has a specific sound. It's all kind of like a rolling sound, but you'll never forget that sound. Once you've heard it,
Mhm.
you'll never forget it again. And so I was in the garage with my dog, and then I heard it coming back over the garage, and I heard it in the backyard swirling again. And my dog ran out and started barking. And I about that time though, I was scared. I felt petrified because I was afraid I was going to get abducted. At that time, it was all new to me, so I was unsure. So I stayed in the garage until I heard it leave again. But I've had several other times. I've had several times I have seen them come very close to me.
Yes, there's been quite a lot going on there. Now, Jean, when you first got involved in this case, what was your first impression?
Well, it's probably about 8 years ago that I met Valerie, and on the one case, and ever since then we've been busy all the time up to today. and with her sightings. She was very frightened at first. So we became good friends because I would go over there and talk with her. She was just really scared. And then after, I don't know, 3 months to 6 months, she got very used to it because she saw so much and had so many happenings. So she became more relaxed with it. And like now, she talks to them all the time and actually can bring them down by talking with them. She has quite a connection with them. And she started doing that way back when I first met her after she got over the fear. But she was very fearful at first. And it's been a very interesting case, to say the least, and an ongoing case.
I remember early on during one of the times that I went out that there was some type of evidence left behind. And if I remember correctly, Valerie saw something coming out of a UFO onto the ground and on the vegetation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then when we got out there, only part of the bushes and trees had curled up leaves, and they were discolored, but the other surrounding area, there wasn't anything amiss with it at all. It was very odd.
It looked like kind of like snowflakes, but kind of like glittery snowflakes is what it looked like.
Yeah, and that is intriguing to me because there have been a few other cases, and in one in particular I'm thinking of that was in a documentary film about some glittery substance that fell down on a tree, and they were able to do some testing on it. Now, unfortunately, we did take samples, but they never were tested by MUFON. They disappeared somewhere along the way.
Right.
So we didn't get them tested. Now, luckily, we have a lab in Missouri now. So if we get anything new, we can send it right away to the Missouri lab and get what the results. It would have been so interesting to find out what that was. But there was, something obviously different. Jean, in your investigations, what's the strangest thing that you've ever observed at one? I know Valerie's lived in 2 houses in Sugar Creek, so either place.
Well, at the first house over on Whitney, where she lived, I think it was the time that we were all together. It was Margie, it was you and 2 other investigators and myself and Valerie, and we were all outside, and we seen this light that we all became very interested in it. It would streak across. It was kind of streaking across. It was moving rather slowly, I guess, not real fast, and blinking out and coming back on. We knew whatever it was not a satellite or anything. And that was the time when all of a sudden, Margie, you jumped out of your chair, frightened to death. And I'll let you tell the rest of that story.
Okay, well, I'll tell this part.
That was one of the strangest nights.
We had a long evening, and everybody was tired, and 2 of us were sitting in a chair, and the other people were standing. And one of the investigators was standing to my right, but a couple feet back. And so we're watching this strange light. All of us are looking in the same direction, looking at this strange light in the sky, trying to figure out what it was. And it seemed to keep getting bigger and bigger. So it was approaching us. But at one point, I thought I saw the investigator lean over and with his bald head and pick something up off the ground. I thought, well, he must have dropped something. So I look, and it's not him. It's an ET. And the ET was just staring at the same thing we were, like he was watching it. But as soon as I got shocked about that, I couldn't see him anymore. So I jumped out of my chair. I did jump out of my chair real fast.
I never seen you move so fast, Margie, ever.
So I told Valerie about it, and she says, "Oh, did it look like this?" And she scrolled through her camera where she had taken a picture of an ET next to a tree on her property, and it looked exactly the same as what I saw. And so we sat back down. It happened again. And then I regained my composure. We sat back down again, and we're just watching the sky. It happened a third time. This time, I looked over, and I wasn't quite as scared as I was earlier because I've seen ETs, but not right close, not a foot away from me, And this time he turned and looked at me and gave me this little smirk, like, "Hey, I'm watching this too." And it kind of reminded me of that movie Paul. Where that he kind of had an attitude like that. I will never forget that. I will never forget that. It felt to me like that ET was always there on that property. Like that's where he was hanging out. And Valerie, you've seen a number of ETs on your property.
I have, and one time I was taking a picture of some crabs that was above my house, and later I looked back on my pictures, and there was an ET in my house. I saw it in the window in my picture, and it was looking at me while I was taking a picture of the house. It was looking right at me.
And that's one of those things that you don't expect.
It shocked me. They're in my house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marty, I just want to say something though. She had pictures of two ETs in her backyard, and we saw it. Then it disappeared off her camera, and we could never find the photo again. And I had a similar experience out there at her house where three other investigators were there, and they yelled at me because I was taking photos and I had my camera around my neck, and I went over and there was an owl in the tree. Yeah. And they said, take pictures of the owl. Well, I took quite a few photos of this owl in the tree. And then I would go forward about 10 steps and take more photos. Then I did it again. And finally, the owl flew off. Later that night, I downloaded all my photos. I had pictures of the tree, but no owl. And I had it just disappeared off the camera. Things like this happened frequently at her place.
What had happened is that after I told you guys about that UFO or that disc that was in my backyard, so you guys wanted to come out and take a look where that UFO was at, where that disc was at. And so they set up a computer with sounds of chickens and things like that, trying to pull out just anything. Isn't that right? And so then a great big giant owl flew down and was in the tree, right where close to where that I saw that disc. It was huge. And I walked over to it. I looked up at it. And I go, well, hello. And it just looked down at me. And so you guys all went over there and was looking up at it. And was really surprised. This thing was just the biggest owl I'd ever seen. And
how big do you think that was, Jean?
Oh my goodness.
Big? I didn't think it was all that large. I mean, it was a large owl, but I've seen them that big out in the woods before. It was a good size owl.
That's the biggest one I ever saw.
When it flew off, I was really surprised at its size, and it flew into the field next to her. And we didn't see it again, but we know the relationship between the owls and ETs, how they are interlocked, and often your mind will say you're seeing an owl, but in reality you're not. You're seeing an ET. And I think that's why it wasn't on the film.
Well, Mike Clellan talks about that in his book, The Messengers, and talks there different types of birds can be associated, but the owls are the most common. And I've had some other cases myself where people believe that they're looking at an owl, but when you investigate it, it's really something else. So there was another time that we were all together out at the first house where Valerie lived, and she pointed out Venus, and she told me that was a UFO, and I said I was insisting that it was Venus, right? And I looked at my sky map, and that's where it should have been. So we went about, what we were doing for another couple hours or so. And during that time, I would just keep looking over there just to check on it to make sure. And it was moving. It was moving slowly, but it was faster than the rest of the stars and the planets in the sky. It was moving faster than it should have. And then right at the end, I think we all saw this where it got bigger and bigger and turned an orange color,
Right.
and then finally went down behind the horizon. And I was just absolutely floored by what I saw,
Very
because
strange.
that wasn't Venus.
Yeah, high strangeness in that place.
Most definitely. And in thinking about the location, that was right at the Missouri River.
Uh-huh.
So do you believe that there could be a base or something in the Missouri River where these things are coming in and out of?
I don't know. I know over there across the street, the conservation is right next to the river. And there's a lot of caves over there in that area. So I wondered if
Well, you remember seeing the one coming up out of the Missouri River? Or was it above the river?
it was
and
above
sucking
the
water?
river and it was sucking water up into it.
Oh my goodness. Tell me about that. What did that craft look like?
I couldn't really see it that well. I took pictures, and that's how I could see it, that it was hovering. I just looked like a long disc, and I just saw the water coming up, but I couldn't really see any detail.
Wow. Now, some other weird things. You've heard some strange sounds, the two of you as well. What were they? What do you think they are?
Well, I would hear sounds out that way, and there's mountain lions over there. And matter of fact, there was a panther that came in my backyard, black panther. My dog went after it, but this was no panther. This had
We were all sitting out at the picnic table, Valerie and her husband and I was kind of through investigating for the evening, getting ready to go, was loading up my stuff, and we sat down there and was talking. And we heard this horrible, deep guttural roar.
like you never heard before.
It was very frightening. And I looked at Valerie's husband and I said, "What in the heck is that?" And he goes, "I don't know." And so we sit there, we heard it 3 times, I think, 4.
I don't remember.
3 or 4 times, and it would wait in between. There would be a dead silence for 2 or 3 minutes maybe, and then it would let out this sound again.
I give you chills.
It did. It was very scary, and the neighbor next door came out and was shooting his gun, and her husband tells me that he gets drunk and goes out and shoots his gun often. And I said, "Okay, I've heard this horrible roar. Now this drunken neighbor's out here shooting. I'm going home tonight."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was the end of that. But I really felt like it was a Bigfoot because I've never heard anything like that before. And some of the sounds, I went back and tried to find on the computer sounds of Bigfoot. And it took me a long time, but I finally found that sound.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
So do you both agree that it sounded like the vocalizations on the internet of Bigfoot? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, what's interesting is that you're right near that conservation area, and that's the exact same place where my son-in-law was a few years ago fishing with his 2 cousins, and they saw a large black colored male Bigfoot come out of the woods, look in the stream, and look back and forth at things. And here they are. They're just frozen stiff. They didn't say a word. They didn't move. it was several yards away from this thing, and it did not notice them. And it looked back and forth in the stream like it was looking for fish, and then turned around and walked back into the woods. And they grabbed their fishing gear and they left, and they never went back, and they will not go back.
Well, Margie, when
So,
you told me that, I just knew for sure that it was a Bigfoot because
yeah.
as the crow flies, it was probably a mile away from where I heard that sound, or we heard the sound.
Yeah, and that would be in that area.
Mhm.
And there have been some other sightings of Sasquatch in this area, but when people think about the city or the greater Kansas City area, there are a lot of woods and streams and rivers going through here. Lots of places for people to hide, parks, for animals to hide, and parks and things. So I think there certainly is an opportunity for a creature like that to exist and live and have a food supply. We've got deer and everything else. Now, Valerie, also, you mentioned a Black Panther earlier. If you call the Missouri Department of Conservation, they will tell you, as they have told me, there are no Black Panthers in Missouri.
That's
or
true.
in this region, but people do see them.
Yes, my friend that lived over the hill over there, she went out of her barn, and that Black Panther was laying on the bench in her barn.
Oh my goodness! Did she call anybody?
She just backed off real quick and went in the house. That's all I know.
Okay, so if you do see something like that, you want to report it. I was also told there were no mountain lions in Independence, but they caught one a couple of years ago right on the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt that you have seen mountain lions out there and other things. But yeah, it's interesting that a lot of people who are UFO experiencers also experience other strange things.
Yes.
And that brings me to the question of this bird that morphed into a UFO. Tell us about that sighting.
Where I live at now, I live over there close to the cemetery off on River Boulevard, which there is a river over there close to me again. And I was in my backyard, and sometimes you get hawks and buzzards and things, but I saw this big old hawk flying around, and then it had its wings out, and then it put its wings close to it, and it shaped it to a disc and just shot off.
So it morphed into a craft.
Yes.
Was it a typical disc-shaped silver craft? Was it silver color, metallic?
It looked like a darker type of metallic. It wasn't shiny.
Okay. And then it shot off real quickly and out of sight.
It did, but it was definitely a disc.
Yeah. Now, oddly, that was right at the time where I was heavily studying winged cryptids.
Right.
And I think you replied to something I posted about it. And I find that fascinating because I do see a connection with winged cryptids and UFOs. And so, not only owls might be involved and other types of similar animals. I had something very strange happen about a year ago, right here at my office. I was leaving work in my vehicle, and I saw a hawk come, and it swooped down over my car and swooped right over my windshield. I can't believe it missed the windshield and over the hood of the car and then off. But what was odd is when it was overhead, right over my head, I heard a motor sound, like it was mechanical. Now, it looked completely like a normal hawk, but there was some, it was a drone or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was mechanical. So that, that makes me wonder what the heck is going on with, we see one thing, but it's really another. It might not always be a screen memory, but it's connected somehow. And now you also had a recent sighting, I want to say maybe a year ago at your new place, of an ET in your backyard. Isn't that right, Valerie? by the fence, I believe you said.
Oh, it wasn't a year ago. It wasn't too long ago.
Okay, what happened?
How long ago? A couple months ago or 3 months ago?
About 3 months.
I was outside sitting on a chair. It was at night. It was so relaxing, and my dog again was sleeping on the patio next to my chair. My sleep, I just fell like really peaceful sleep, and I woke up, and my dog woke up at the same time, and we were hearing the sound. If you imagine, how would you explain that? You recorded me doing it, like you know how let's say use this as an example. You know how an old person walks, they shuffle,
Mm-hmm.
and so this is what I heard. It was over here where my gate would be on the right hand side of me, and it was shuffling because it was running in its own way, running along, and it woke us both up, and we looked over there at it and was shocked, and it looked over at us, and it goes, it was shocked.
Whoa.
Had a little mouth, but it was like drooped down, like that. Okay, like that. And
Okay.
kind of open. And of course, it had real big eyes, and its head didn't go up real high like that. It went more like, I'd say, like this, and kind of back, more back, but it still was big. And it was pure white, uh, but it was glowing. I don't know if that was a protective shield. I don't know what that glow was had around it. And but anyway, it was scared, and I was shocked, and it just shuffled off really really fast, and it went towards my water garden, and disappeared. Well, just instantly, me and my dog went first. He was gonna go get it, and he went out there in the garden. He was just looking all around like where'd it go? And I was out there looking for it too.
Yeah, if only the dog could talk, right?
Yes.
We could get his side of the story too. But that was more recent. And we went out there recently. Gene and I went out to visit and observe the skies. And sure enough, towards the end of the evening, a UFO comes. You and Gene took off down towards the back part of your yard, and I see this UFO coming through the trees. I'm like, wait a minute. So I get my camera and I holler at you guys. You don't hear me. So I'm like, here's a UFO, and they're not even seeing this. They're just chatting among themselves. So I got video of it, and I'll post it sometime soon, so people can see that. But it was definitely kind of an odd experience. But I do remember that you saw something. Maybe this was a couple of years ago at this site. It tore around your fence in the back, not
Oh,
the one that came. Yeah. So tell about
yeah,
that one.
that's right. Well, I was putting a fence up, so I'd be going around where the shed's at, and I was getting my lattice fencing, picking it up, and taking it around the fence, around the shed, and then I would hang it up where the existing fence was at. But I was in a hurry this time, and so I ran around the shed and went to go grab it up, and I had a wagon over here. I had a fence right here, and there's a wagon right here next to the fence. And and then the other fencing was here. I was grabbing up. And as I ran there, that little alien, that little ET, was crouched down in that wagon, had its little hands up over that fence, and was watching me, was spying on me. And when I was right there next to it, I looked over and I was like, oh my gosh, they looked over at me like that. And it sprung up over that fence, like hopped over it, almost like a jackrabbit, like hopped up over that. And its knees didn't go backwards, but the knees were forward, like he couldn't straighten his legs. But he was running with his knees like crouched, like his knees were still bent. And he ran like the Dickens over towards in the further part of the backyard. And there's that fence, and then there's pasture over there. And he just disappeared.
What do you think he was doing? You think he was observing you?
He was watching me.
Wow.
She had another very strange ET type experience, but a lot different when she walked into her garage one time. You remember that?
Yes. Well, yeah, I hurried. And a lot of see, if I'm always in a hurry. And sometimes you catch them unawares when you're in a hurry. They don't have time to think. And so I was just like running into my garage, and up on the rafters was this ET, and I had never seen anything like this before. Nothing like any pictures I'd ever seen. It was pretty big, and it like an insect.
Yeah.
It was like an insect. It has legs out like this, crouched like a spider, hanging onto the rafters, and his arms were over like that, hanging onto the rafters, and it was like leaning over and looking over at me. And this one had a little bit of hair on his face, though. The other pictures I've seen, they don't have hair. This one here had hair on its face.
You said it looked like I can't think of the name of the insect.
Like a praying mantis? Or
Yes.
Like a mantis?
Praying mantis.
kind
That's
of
what she
praying
told me.
mantis.
What
Yeah.
color was it?
It was kind of a brownish.
And how big was it?
Oh,
If it
Anyway.
stood up, how big, how tall would
I
it be?
would say probably about 7 foot if it stood up.
Wow.
Yeah,
And it had 2 arms and 2 legs?
yeah, because one of the arms was attached like this. He was using his legs like a spider to hang onto the rafters.
Oh my goodness.
2 arms and 2 legs.
And then how did you lose sight of it?
It flew out over my head. Well, I looked at him. I saw him. And I instantly, I wasn't afraid. I just said, I see you. I just said that. I see you. And his mouth, like the other one, they just dropped their mouths like, and he flew out over the top of my head and went out. And I didn't see him after that. I don't know how he flew
Wow.
out. He didn't have wings.
Yeah.
I didn't see wings anyway. I just saw it go up over my head, go out.
That has to be one of the most bizarre things
Very-
ever, Valerie. I
very
mean,
frightening.
yeah. Well, there
I
have been
wasn't
sightings
scared.
of mantis,
Mhm.
but usually it's around water. It's occasionally not.
It had been raining a lot.
Wow.
I had a lot of water gardens, remember?
Oh yes, yes. Well, and you most certainly do have the habitat in your yard for all kinds of things. Have you seen any fairies in your yard?
I see these little lights that come in my garden. Some are red, like really bright red. Some are really bright blue. Sometimes they can be really bright white. And they'll just be flying around. Sometimes they disappear. Sometimes they go, different places. I've seen them up in the trees. I've seen them on my patio. And I never saw them in my house until just recently. Now they're in my house.
Mm-hmm. I know
But
when we were out
more-
there
It's more
recently.
of the blue ones. It's more of the real bright neon blue ones that's in my house. I don't know if those are spirits or if those are ETs.
It was definitely something trying to communicate, especially if they're coming in your house. Now, do they go through walls or windows?
I've never seen them do that.
Okay, so they just appear and you don't know how they come in
They
or how
just
they leave.
appear. Yeah, they just appear. I was out in my car. I went out in my car, and one appeared in my car for the first time, right over next to me where my glove compartment would be. It was probably about that big around. And it
Mhm.
just flashed like that. It kind of moved over a little bit and disappeared. And that kind of, it didn't scare me. It just kind of took me by surprise.
Yeah. So you are a Native American flute player,
Yes.
And I know that you've gone outside and played the flute. Do you think there's any connection? Have you had anything occur while you're playing your music?
Uh, they'll start gathering around. They'll start coming in closer, and you'll start seeing the crafts moving around in the sky.
Hmm. So there may be some form of telepathic communication going on, and as a result of the music that you're playing.
That and I'm a bit. I can't say I'm a full fledged psychic, but I do have some. Always, ever since I was a child, some psychic abilities. I don't try to do it; it just happens. And so
Hmm.
uh, I have a real connection with them. It's like a pulling spiritual. It's a real pulling. I have a real connection. And sometimes when I know that they're in the yard and I don't always see them, I can feel them. And sometimes it takes my breath away. I like not like scared, like cold chills or nothing, but I could just feel it in here, and it kind of takes my breath away.
That time over at Whitney, you got very ill.
No, I didn't get ill.
Well, you had to sit down. You couldn't
I
function.
wasn't ill. It just overtook me,
Hmm.
and I was like, and moaning even because it just like took over my mind, took over my body, and I felt completely encompassed, like it was like in and through me. I can't explain it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I did fall on my knees because I got very weak. It makes you very weak when they do that to you because they just take over. And I felt one with it. And that has happened probably about three other times. It's happened like that.
Wow, that's that's it's fascinating, and it's so interesting. It's like you're an open channel for this,
Mm.
and that's why these things are coming in. But Jean, you have been out there at both of her houses a number of times. Why don't you talk about some of the sightings that you've had when you've been out there together?
Well, mostly when I've been out there, we've just seen like white lights appear and do crazy things in the sky, like zigzag or up and down. Sometimes there's been more than one. Um, we had some that split apart, and then we'd go back together a few times. To me, that seems like I don't know whether it's crafts or an energy of some sort. I took photos while I was out there one time, and when I came home, developed them out. I had a picture of a fairy, and you could tell very much that it was a fairy. Um, just such an array of things have happened out there, from Bigfoot to fairies and seeing really strange lights. Valerie called me one time and told me that at 3 a.m. in the morning she woke up and she just had a feeling she needed to go outside. So she went outside, and now she was barefooted. She had her camera with her, and she sees this UFO, and she's running down the street at 3 in the morning barefooted taking pictures of this UFO.
It was changing colors. It was like a ball of energy, and it would change from red to green to like a blue, and it was like a ball of energy, and it was just kind of like like it was had energy through it, and so I was going down the road taking pictures of it, and then all of a sudden this plane, jet, it's a jet, a fighter plane, one of those, and it came from out of nowhere. I'm telling you, and it went right towards it, and I'm telling you, I was in front of it, and it went right to that that energy ball of energy, and that thing just poof was gone, and that plane right, I'd say for here, like if you're across the street, went woof and went straight up in front of me, and I could see the whole underneath belly of that plane go straight up in the air.
Oh my goodness.
And that was frightening.
Did you get a picture of the plane too?
No, it shocked me. I mean,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
taking pictures of the UFO, and then when I saw the plane coming, I was afraid the plane was going to hit me.
Well, for people that don't live here around us, in Whiteman Air Force Base, about 30 minutes from us by car. So by plane, it's pretty fast. It can be here in a
Oh yeah.
hurry. So
Yeah,
we
they
have,
can. So that means that they had radar on whatever that object was being picked up by radar.
Uh-huh.
And it was, what altitude do you think it was? Do you have any idea how far up? I mean, was it pretty close to the ground?
It was probably about, 5 foot.
5 feet off the ground?
Yeah.
she has trouble with measurements. I'd say probably 100 or 50
No,
feet.
no.
5 feet? That's
No.
shorter than you.
I'm 5 foot. Yeah. It was at 5 foot off the ground, and it was rolling along. It was just moving along. It was
No, the
across the
jet.
street.
The jet.
Oh, the jet.
Yeah.
No, I meant the object because
Oh, I
yeah,
thought you meant the jet. I
no,
was
the
at
whole-
5 feet.
yeah, because I don't think that radar can pick anything up under 200 feet.
Well, it went
So
up
that
though,
means
then.
it had to be up higher to start with, and then came down. That's what I'm getting at. That the
Maybe
object.
it was. Maybe it was. I just remember it being across the street, being 5 foot off the ground, even with me.
But then
Okay.
it went up, didn't it?
No, it just kind of went. It was because the jet came and it just poof disappeared. Because I was recording it, and I got it on my computer, and I could hear myself saying, "Well, it disappeared."
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'd say you have some high strangeness happening. Of course, we're not going to give out the address because otherwise you'd be inundated with people. But just the general area of Sugar
Well,
Creek.
that was where she used to live
Okay. Okay.
at first place.
Mhm.
Right.
And that's where everything happened. I still have things that happen at my new house, but not like over in Whitney.
Yeah, and that
I
was
have had I have had the rod, and this was also at 3 o'clock. I was new to all this, and I felt compelled to go outside. And I opened up the side patio door, and I looked up, and there was a rod-shaped craft, very very bright, right above me, straight right across above me, right just like right over the house. Probably I'd say about 10 feet over the house. It was a two-story house,
hmm
and it was huge. It was huge, and it was all the rod shape was all lit up, and little lights on the side, like it was hanging off the side, on either side. And then there was like a light. Can you see how I'm doing? Because and then in front of it there was like a big spotlight, a big light, and it just stayed there. It hovered there, and I was saying, "Oh my God, you're beautiful." It's the only thing I kept saying is, "Oh my God, you're beautiful." And then it starts showing off for me.
Hmm.
So it went backwards over me, went forward, and it did this 3 times, forward and backward, and then it went side to side, side to side, side to side. It went forward, and then it came back, went forward and came back, and then just slowly took off at ease. And then I jumped on the phone. I says, "Gee," and she's like, "Oh my God, thought I was asleep."
She called me at 3 in the morning. This is when we first started investigating with
Oh,
her. Woke me up out of a dead sleep, scared me too at 3 in the morning when the phone rings. And I said, Valerie, unless you're hurt, don't ever call me again at 3 in the morning.
I tell somebody.
unless you're being abducted, don't call me. Yeah, yeah, I totally understand. But well, now you're used to this stuff. It's kind of old hat, and I think, like I said earlier, that you're a channel for this stuff, and you're psychic and you're tuned in, and a lot of people who they get the telepathic message that they need to go outside, but they don't know why, and then they do, and something happens. So that, that's a good message for people who get that. When that happens, pay attention to it and go outside and who knows what you're going to see, and make sure you take your cell phone with you, put it on video, to capture it on video. And you've gotten a lot of pictures, you've gotten a lot of video, and hopefully all of that will get put together sometime in the near future.
I hope to do that.
Yeah, I know Jean is working on a book, and so hopefully that will get done very quickly. Yeah, I do have one question, and I don't think I've ever asked you this. Have you had anything as far as paranormal or like poltergeist activity happening in your house?
Did you see your dad? Oh, I see the blue lights sometimes in my house. Then I saw my Uncle Eddie. Right after that, my Uncle Eddie was standing there in front of me as I was walking into the hallway. But I do see people that have gone on, and I can see this anywhere though. It don't have to be in my house. But I was in the grocery store at Walmart, and there was just me and this other lady. This happened twice. I was getting so I was looking at bread, and this other lady was down the aisle, and the bread jumped out.
Oh, okay.
Jumped off and landed on the floor, and I looked at that lady, and I says, "Did you see that?" And she goes, "Yes, I did." She took off.
Yeah, that might have been a message that was the bread for you.
Yes.
Here
Yes, it
I
was
am.
bread. It was another one.
All right. Well, yeah, that is good stuff too.
Tell her about the lights in the tree. The lights in the tree. Woke you up in the middle of the night and you knew to go out? That just happened. There was a light in a tree. There was a light in the street. Oh yes, I was. Sorry, I have a lot of things happen. Okay, sometimes nightly. So sometimes it's gotta remind me. Yes, I went outside and I took my dogs out to use the bathroom. Well, they always bark or something. And so they went over to the gate, and they were just standing there, and they don't ever do that. And I thought, what in the world are they looking at? So I went over there, and they was watching it. And right across the street, my neighbor's tree, right next to his house, was a humongous light, very, very, very bright. And so my dogs were just standing there watching this light. And so I watched it with them, and then it just disappeared. No, it didn't disappear. It disappeared, and then it came down over the road. Mind you, the light on the street light was out. It was completely dark, and this light came down. It disappeared, and then it reappeared over the road, and then it took off and it went down river. And I watched it go down river. What color was it? Bright, bright, bright white.
How big was it?
Well, when it was in the tree from across the street, it looked like as big as a baseball or a beach ball. A beach ball. But when it landed on the street, it got bigger. I'd say the brilliance of a size of a small car. Bigger than a car. It was taller than a car. Whoa! I'd say as tall as a elephant. I don't know. It was big.
Wow!
And my husband has seen that as well. It woke him up in the middle of the night, and he was sleeping in that one room where the window, and he told me about it. He saw a bright light in the neighbor's yard. And I just passed it off, yeah, right. But
have you ever spoken to the neighbors to find out if they've had any experiences?
They said they don't believe in them.
Oh, okay. So they don't have the experience if they don't believe. I mean, that's how it goes, right?
I've asked them. They said they don't believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty wild. You've also heard some strange, unexplained sounds in Sugar Creek, the same as we've had in Independence. Now, I have not heard that for quite some time, but there was a period of time for 2 or 3 years where I was hearing a strange, loud sound that sounded like jet engines, and it would be only at night, and it would just, you'd feel this vibration in the ground, and I could never find the source, but it always felt like it was coming from Sugar Creek. And didn't you tell me that you heard the same thing?
Yes, yes. You could hear it like they're right above you, but you could never see them. They were invisible.
Have you ever had any invisible planes fly over where you heard them but you didn't see them?
Yes,
I've had that happen as well.
yes.
Now, you and I don't live that far apart, and Jean and I don't live that far apart. So there have been some occasions where we've seen the same thing. In fact, there was a sighting just recently that my employee saw, and this is a guy who's never, ever had any experiences, never seen a UFO. He and his girlfriend saw 2 fireballs dancing around, playing around 24 Highway, and then headed towards the north, towards Sugar Creek. And you also saw them.
I saw it. Yes, I saw it go across the sky. I'd never seen anything like that before. It would be like looking at a meteor fireball, and it was just going straight across.
Only very slow.
Right, it wasn't going real fast. Right.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
had tail.
Oh, it had a tail?
Like it had a tail. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty bizarre stuff. Oh my goodness, we are getting short on time here. Jean, why don't you tell us a little bit about Kansas City MUFON?
Well, we're going to start up again. We've been shut down for almost 2 years now because of COVID. And October 12th, we're going to have our first meeting, and we're going to have a town hall meeting. Hopefully, we'll have a very good turnout and press and newspapers there. And we have a lot of vendors that are going to be there, some really good ones. We're going to do presentations on some of the high strangeness, I should say, going on in the Kansas City area, because we have everything from some very weird clouds that I'm going to present on, and then Bear, he's going to talk about the Bigfoot experiences, and well, we've had a lot of people report seeing Bigfoots and cryptids in the area. And Margie, aren't you going to do a presentation too?
I am. Yes.
And yours is going to be on?
Well, I'm going to talk about Missouri MUFON in general, and give everybody kind of an idea of that, and and a little bit about the winged cryptids that have been sighted. So
well, we'll start from 6:30 to 8:30 will be the meetings, and if people want to eat with us, they need to come in earlier, like maybe even 5 o'clock. They have a nice cafeteria there. They have been shorthanded with people, so it could take a while, they said, but
okay. All right, and that's Missouri MUFON, not .com. That's wrong.
Oh, we didn't say where it was. It's on
MissouriMUFON.org.
Okay, yeah. It's at the where is it?
The DAB Hall on 40 Highway.
That's it. On 40 Highway.
MissouriMUFON.org to get all the info. And Jean, you're doing a great job as a section director for Kansas City and a MUFON investigator. And I appreciate all your hard work.
We appreciate you too, Margie. You do a lot of hard work for us.
And Valerie, thank you so much for taking time out this evening to tell your story. That's been fascinating. I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy it. We appreciate it. This is Margie Kay, and we are done for this evening. I'll see you here again next week.
You've been listening to the UNX News Podcast with Margie K. Any rebroadcast or duplication of this program or its content without express written permission from UNX Media or Margie K. herself is strictly prohibited. The UNX News Podcast, in direct cooperation with the internet website unxmedia.com.